It has been a little over 1 week since I took delivery of the Sport Cub S and had its maiden flight. And since then, I've had 17 batteries through this aircraft. And at this time, I'd like to kind of take a few minutes and kind of go over the pros and cons of kind of what I've discovered since flying this. This, of course, is my really this is my third aircraft. The first one was the HobbyZone Super Cub, the 3-channel trainer, and then I moved on to the Apprentice S15 with Safe. It's my first 4-channel trainer, and this is my first ultra micro that I've learned to fly on. And I kind of did this in preparation to learn how to fly ultra micro warbirds. So I wanted something that's small, maneuverable, and get me used to flying in a very close environment, unlike the Apprentice, which needs a very large area. So let's kind of go over the pros and cons. One of the pros, that's where we'll start, is of course the size. The aircraft is perfect for flying in small areas. The wingspan is roughly about 20 inches long, and you can see it's not very long in comparison to what a typical park flyer is. However, it's not small enough where it requires only indoor flight. You can fly this thing outside. It's also easy to transport. Unlike the Apprentice, you got to take the wings off of it, and you need a large flying area. This thing, I can either leave it in its box, which makes a great carrying case, or I can just throw it on the front seat, the back seat, anywhere inside my car, and I can be on my way to go fly. So it's great for the standpoint of it doesn't take a lot of prep work. If you look outside and you say, you know what, the winds are calm, let's go flying, I can grab the aircraft, throw it in the car, and be gone. So it's easy to transport. And of course, like I mentioned before, it's one of the primary reasons I got this is to learn how to fly ultra micro warbirds. So I needed something that's suitable for flying in small areas. And this aircraft seems to accomplish that without any trouble at all. I don't have any trouble parking lots, baseball diamonds, small baseball diamonds like you'd find at a park, a small soccer field, anything like that. The aircraft seems to do very well. I've flown it at some very large areas, like where I fly my Apprentice at. That's a lot more comfortable to fly because I can have the room to really explore the aircraft, get it up at a higher altitude, and not worry about trees. But it does just fine on like a very small baseball diamond that you'd find like on a city park. It does great in small areas. So also, because I'm going to be flying this a lot closer to myself than the Apprentice, the paint scheme makes it very easy to see the orientation of the aircraft. You got the blue on the leading edge, blue on the top surfaces. You got a lot of white down below. The aircraft's easy to kind of keep an eye on what the orientation is in flight. And you're flying this a lot closer to yourself than what you'd fly the Apprentice at. The Apprentice is a small dot in the sky in comparison to this. This thing is up close, and especially at dawn and dusk when lighting is low, the way that the paint scheme makes it very easy to identify what direction the aircraft is in. The other advantage of the size of this aircraft is that it can be flown anywhere. I have not flown it like I got a pond behind my house. I haven't flown it off that yet. But small baseball diamonds, small parks, parking lots, pretty much anywhere you can get this little guy in the air and maneuver around. It's really great. And that's one reason why I've got 17 flights on this thing is that if the wind is where I need it to be at, I just grab it and go. I can go to a parking lot while running errands. I can get a couple flights off. I can run to the baseball diamond and park down the street. You can go just about anywhere with this little guy and get it up in the air and fly it. So next, performance. Like I mentioned before, it's great for flying in tight areas. Flying it in intermediate or expert mode, this thing has plenty of maneuverability to kind of get this thing on a pretty good angle and some very tight turns, and the aircraft behaves fantastic in terms of how well it handles. As for engine performance, you can fly it low and slow, or you can fly it at full throttle, a little bit of down elevator, and this thing scoots along pretty good. I wouldn't say it's underpowered for the configuration it's in, but it's most certainly not overpowered. It's not a speed demon, but because of that, you can fly this thing low and slow and really close to you, which is great for me trying to work on flying ultra micros where you're going to be flying a lot closer to both myself and to the ground. So this aircraft really gives you the confidence to do that with its performance. Next up is stability. In beginner mode, this thing is rock solid. I was shocked at how stable this aircraft is when you switch it over to beginner mode. It automatically dials in a rudder with elevator, so it does coordinated turns right from the very beginning. I really only did a few flights on beginner mode before I switched over to intermediate mode, and then once I got the aircraft a little bit closer to being dialed in, I switched over to expert mode. But as for stability, the aircraft is incredibly stable. Even making very, very, very tight turns to avoid trees and fences and other obstacles, the aircraft didn't roll over it didn't tip stall. It just simply did exactly what I asked it to do. So it definitely gets a thumbs up on stability, which of course makes it a great learning platform for either a beginner pilot or someone who's moved on to 4-channel aircraft or wants to learn 4-channel aircraft. This thing is definitely one to go with. So next up, it's price. At around $100 for the bind and fly version, this thing is very affordable to get started into RC aircraft. It's about a third of the price of my Apprentice, and that kind of gives me the ability to be a little more comfortable with how I handle the aircraft. I'm going to fly it in tighter places. I'm going to try maneuvers that I wouldn't try with my Apprentice. I'm going to do a lot of things that I would not have the guts to do with the Apprentice because of the fact that it's a lot more affordable. It doesn't weigh as much. It doesn't cost as much. The replacement parts are pretty cheap. If I stuff it into the ground, it's pretty easy to repair and pretty affordable. The Apprentice, if I stuff that thing in the ground, I'm looking at a very lengthy repair time or an expensive build to get it back up in the air. Not with this guy. I feel a lot more comfortable at this price point. And really, if you're trying to get into RC, $100, that's pretty cheap to get into it. It's pretty affordable to get started. So pricing is another one of the big pros about this aircraft. It is very affordable to get going. Because you know what, if you don't like it, you didn't have that much invested in it. But I can't imagine you not liking this plane. So, and because, with that cost, I'm a lot more comfortable to try things that I would just simply never try with the Apprentice or an expensive aircraft. It gives me the ability to say, yeah, I'm going to try to fly around that light pole, or I'm going to try to fly closer to that tree or closer to the ground. Where the Apprentice, it's going to be at a very high altitude, far away from any obstacles, and it's just basically a dot in the sky in comparison to this that I can fly very low, slow, real close to the ground, 5 to 10 to 15 feet, and be comfortable with it because I don't have a huge investment in it. And so far, it's not had a single accident, crash, or anything, which is great. So the other advantage I think of this aircraft, or another pro of this advantage, is the appearance. It looks very authentic. It looks very much like a Sport Cub. It does. In fact, there's a guy locally who has one in this very same paint scheme. And it's cool to see it flying around in the air. And when I'm flying mine around, it looks very similar. It looks very, very scale from all directions. It's got a lot of attention to detail. The logos here, the cowl. Everything looks very scale, and it has a lot of presence in the air. When you see it flying, you know that it's a Cub. It just looks really cool. And when you're flying on ultra micro, you're flying it close in, so you're able to see a lot more of the detail when it passes by you. And so it's important to have a good scale looking aircraft. And this thing definitely hits all the marks for appearance. It's just a really good looking aircraft. So one thing I did notice that I'd like to add for the appearance on this thing is navigation lights. Because you fly this primarily in low wind conditions, it's going to be either dusk or dawn. And if you're like me, you work in the morning or work during the day, you don't have an opportunity to go flying before early in the morning before you go into the office, so you end up flying late at night. And as the sun sets, it would be nice to add some navigation lights, which really enhance the appearance of the aircraft. It makes it look even more realistic as it's flying around with all the lights lit up on it. So that kind of covers it for kind of the pros of the aircraft. Let's talk about some of the cons, some of the things that I don't really care for. One of the downfalls is, of course, the size. It's a pro and it's a con. And the con part of the size is the fact that because of how small it is, and because of how lightweight it is, and because of the wing shape, the undercambered wing, the aircraft gets bounced around a lot in wind. Really anything more than 5 miles per hour, the aircraft becomes difficult to control. And I tried it at 7 miles per hour the other day. The wind kind of kicked up unexpectedly, and I noticed the aircraft would basically just hover in the air and have difficulty penetrating through the wind. Upon turning, it would move dramatically towards me, away from the wind, and then going the opposite direction, it would zoom to the other side of the baseball diamond very quickly. I didn't feel very comfortable flying the airplane in those conditions. It seemed like a primary way to stick this thing into the tree, crash it, lose it, something like that. Its size does not do well in wind. I see a lot of people saying they fly these things at 10 to 15 miles per hour wind. I don't buy that for one instance. Maybe if you do, you have something bigger than I do, because I'm here to tell you, I don't feel comfortable flying with it. It's not worth the risk. Stick to the low wind conditions. This thing will be an awesome bird to fly. So because of its size, wind is kind of a problem. So the other concern I have is about the brush motor life. You know, I got 17 flights on this thing so far, and from a lot of reports, I could be already getting close to the end of the service life for this motor, which means I got to cut the fuselage apart, I got to buy another motor, I got to swap it out. So motor life is a concern. I don't have any problems with it yet, but I expect from reading online that I'm probably almost halfway through its expected life. And that's very sad. I've only had it for a week, and the motor is already could be as close as halfway to being dead. So that's kind of a disappointment. The other problem with it being a brushed motor is I'm a little concerned with how much performance the aircraft will have when I add floats to it. I do eventually want to fly this thing off the water, and with the extra drag and weight of the floats and the brushed motor, I am a little worried about how well this aircraft will perform with the floats on it. From what I've seen online, it seems to do okay, but until I actually try it myself, I'm not going to be 100% sure. So that is a little bit of a concern with the brushed motor. To go with the brushless, you know, Horizon Hobby does have an option for that in another type of, you know, the Carbon Cub Micro, but it's a lot more expensive of a price point, and from what I understand, it's a little bit more difficult to fly. You got to be on top of things a little bit more than this. This is a very relaxing aircraft to fly. The Carbon Cub seems to be a little bit more of a handful, so I'm not ready for that yet either. So if the motor needs replacing, I'll replace it. If it needs more performance, I'll deal with it at that time. The other problem I ran into is adjusting the control surfaces, primarily the elevator. And it has this little U-shaped adjustment on the control rod here. And you squeeze the rod to move the elevator down, you expand it to move it up. And what I've found so far with the aircraft is it does a lot of porpoising right now. I'm really struggling to get the right amount of elevator dialed in. I either have too much elevator or it wants to fly itself into the ground, or too much elevator the other direction in which it wants to climb and stall. Getting this dialed in with these types of this U-shaped wire, extremely difficult. Unlike a threaded connection that you can make like a quarter turn, you know, or a full turn one way or two turns, this either seems on one way too far to the extreme. So getting this thing dialed in expert mode, it's been proving extremely difficult. In beginner mode, it doesn't seem to have so much of a problem. It has very little elevator authority, but as you move up in safe, this becomes more and more of a problem. And so far, a lot of my flights have really been just tweaking around, trying to move that up and down to try to get the aircraft to fly level at 50% throttle. So I'll eventually get there. I think I'm pretty close with it right now, but getting the elevator adjusted just right seems to be kind of a pain of mine. But otherwise, overall, I find the aircraft to be outstanding. I think it's a great platform for relaxing flying. I've really enjoyed the airplane in the week that I've been flying it. One question that's probably going to come up is this okay for beginners? You know, if you have no RC experience at all, could you fly this? I think if you got some flight simulator time and you're comfortable, you know, using your thumbs and, you know, from playing video games or other RC, if you're comfortable with your thumbs, you got good sensitivity, and you're comfortable flying a simulator, yeah, I think this is a great way to get started in the hobby. Being a 4-channel, you don't seem to run out of potential as quickly as you do with a 3-channel airplane, like I did with my Super Cub, or my Sport Cub, or Super Cub, I mean. I ran out of the aircraft pretty quickly. I just kind of became bored with it and had trouble maneuvering it. This aircraft, I think, would be very suitable for a beginner who's comfortable with flying an aircraft or familiar with helicopters or any type of anything with RC related. I think they could get into this fairly easy in beginner mode. It's pretty rock solid. As for me being a pilot with a couple of aircraft under my belt already, it's a lot more relaxing of a flying aircraft, and it's a lot more confidence inspiring than the other aircraft that I've flown. So I think that makes it a great platform for beginners. So would I recommend this for a beginner? Yeah, absolutely. Would I recommend this for someone who's looking for a relaxing airplane to fly in the evening? Absolutely as well. I really don't have, there's really not too many downfalls to this bird. It's a great flying airplane. I'm excited to get more flights out of it. It needs very little wind, so make sure you're aware of that before you head out to the field. Less than 5 miles per hour, go for it. More than 5 miles per hour, put the thing on the shelf and walk away. Don't risk the airplane. It's too nice. It's too nice looking to risk flying in high wind conditions. So, hope you guys enjoyed the review of my Horizon Hobby HobbyZone Sport Cub S2. So, I encourage you to run out to your local hobby shop and get one and enjoy it.